Good evening. Hopefully all the tech is working as it should do and you can see us coming through on your screen. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your time, as much as thanking Russell for joining me today. And I just really want this to be a space where you feel comfortable and welcome. There is the opportunity to put comments into the chat, which I'm reliably informed will be coming through the system that I'm using. So yeah, obviously just thank you so much for your time. Obviously stay as long as you can obviously with us, but if there's other things that you need to do, then that's also fine as well. So yeah, welcome to this space. Really, I suppose the why am I doing this? I'm doing this as a series of 12 sessions once a month with notable people in the industry and the commercial space. And really what I want to do is just provide a context to have an open conversation about pressing kind of leadership challenges and different things that are kind of pressing on the mind. And today we're going to be talking about navigating change, managing change being one of the major kind of points that leaders are kind of grappling with at the moment. But yeah, just very briefly, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about me. You can see my profile on LinkedIn. And obviously happy to kind of take any questions afterwards. But I'm just going to go straight into letting Russell introduce himself. Hi, Russell. Thanks for joining me tonight. Just give a quick overview of your background and what you're all about.
Hi, Simon. Great to be here. So I am a serial Scottish entrepreneur. My role today is less executive responsibility and more as a connector, as I attempt to turn that into a career. And I act as a business advisor. So I act in that capacity with government agencies, commercial organisations, and also 2 universities in the UK.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, I've just sort of checked. Looks like everything is coming through. Should be able to add comments as we join the conversation. But yeah, I'm just going to dive straight in, Russell. So managing change, navigating change. What are you seeing from your purview on a kind of local, kind of Edinburgh, sort of national, Scotland, and global level? What are the sort of challenges that you found leaders in your role as kind of executive coach as part of what you do? What's coming up in those conversations?
So it's very strange, this whole issue of change, because as far as I can see, change is simply a constant. There's nothing. The world doesn't really seem as dramatically different at a local level today than it's ever been. I think we're dealing as leaders with different challenges, though, as part of change. So even in the last 10 years, we've been through a trade change triggered off initially by Brexit. Then we've got societal change. We've got climate change. We've got military action happening in parts of the world. But we've also got the more typical change, such as inflation, changing government regulations. And then we've got the personal one, which is all about talent. Whether that's talent for your organization, working with customers and helping them with their talent, or I think the basic element as well, which is the human one. So from a human perspective, we've seen a change where working in the office 9 to 5 for a small percentage of our society, but definitely a significant one, has now become changed to a certain extent, where people may work from home, may work from the office, etc. It's quite strange for me because I actually moved to that kind of life I stepped down from my last executive role in 2009.
Right.
And then we built a home office in the garden round about then as well. So I kind of lived in that world since then. So I think those and a myriad of others are all what's going on at the moment.
Fantastic. And maybe just sort of dig into some of those factors. So, naturally sort of geopolitical landscape, regulatory changes. Obviously for us, we've got, the election coming up. What's kind of happening from a sort of macro level that you think is really affecting and challenging leaders to think in a new way to stay on top of things?
So I think none of them and all of them. what we
Okay.
really deal with is ourselves as human beings. And it's not the challenges themselves, it's how we approach them. And on a very simple level, we can approach something from a positive perspective or a negative perspective. So we'll
Right.
take Brexit, for example.
Yeah.
So I voted against Brexit. So my natural position is that everything that then happens after Brexit is bad. But Brexit's a reality. So what I've got to try to do is to look at it and go, right, I voted for this not to happen. It did happen. That's the new reality. So how am I going to turn this into an opportunity? And Brexit's a really interesting one. I spoke to someone who is a beer and wine man, and he
Right.
was distributing to countries across Europe. Brexit happened, nightmare for him, paperwork, different problems with shipping stuff, challenges for customers. But over time, he started to realize that a distributor based at Rotterdam was the way to go. And you know what? He would tell you today that's the single best thing he's done for his business, is to
Wow.
have a single core distributor for the whole of Europe. So it's about our mindset and about how we address these changes that happen in our society.
And what are the kind of aspects of leaders that do this well? Are there certain traits that they have? Do they, words like growth mindset, or asking for feedback, or being a servant leader? Are any of these things relevant in terms of how those leaders are dealing and managing those challenges? Which, as you say, a lot of it is out of our control. And quite often, I'll talk with clients with regards to focusing what you can control. And then obviously maneuvering and being agile to react to things as they happen.
We Scots love words that begin with R, like Russell. And the other one is the leadership one, which is resilience. The number one about dealing with change is about how you can do this in a resilient way. And we're talking about that resilience as an individual. No, so someone running a startup was telling me how difficult running a startup is. And I get that, and I can understand that. If you're 22 running your first business, it seems challenging. But to be honest, I ran a business with 220 people in 2008 in London, and we had to make half of them redundant. That's where resilience comes in more than anything else. That is the hardest thing I've ever done in work. People who had been fantastic servants to the company, and I had to work the way through destroying their lives. That is a nightmare. Now, we did everything we could to help them, and it was nothing against their performance at all. It was simply the fact the economy had tanked. And having that personal resilience and an inner strength on how to cope with those challenges, that's number one. And that to me is, I've seen that on a personal level. When things personally go wrong, I understand that what's going to happen is I'm going to get hit by this new information. I'm going to have an immediate emotional reaction, and I'm going to have to let that wash over me. I'm not going to make a sudden decision. I'm going to slowly let this happen to me. And then I'm going to take a breath and decide what to do. I'm not going to think about how I'm emotionally going to feel about this. I'm going to do, what is the next step that I do? You can have a family member rushed into hospital. And then you have to deal with that emotional angst, and then you have to decide what is your role. And my role is typically taxi service. I'll go and pick people up and take them there and then take them back. And that's me contributing. But that resilience, I think, is the key trait. And how you develop resilience, I can think of no other way than to experience pain. You go through these experiences and you learn how to cope with them. And you learn things like having a team around you, trusted advisors, friends, confidants, and just people that you can talk to and say, I'm in a really difficult position. This has happened. And sometimes all you want to do is to pour your heart out. Sometimes they offer advice. But I think resilience is the number one. And you build that resilience up. So resilience as an individual, as a leader, but also resilience as a company. When you're looking at your forward plans for your company, it's right, what would happen if we lost our biggest customer? What would they have? So the biggest customer, they've got a 1-year notice period, so that would give us time to react. We have a plan. So building that resilience into the company by running various different scenarios.
I think it's really interesting when you're talking about the personal as well as the professional, because I've certainly seen that in a lot of clients. And there's a C-suite client I'm working with at the moment that has a dotted line to be a chief exec, and it's been really interesting because our conversation has brought in elements that impact them from outside of work and in. And actually, my view, as I've sort of developed in the coaching world, and given sort of 25 years experience in my career, what I see is that you need to look at someone holistically rather than just looking at the professional. Now, watch out here. Particularly in coaching, you need to contract to make sure you're not providing advice that a psychologist or a doctor or psychiatrist would do. But I'm wondering what your view, just to explore that further in terms of, the human. We were saying before we came on here, we're all human beings, and we're never going to be perfect, but we can strive for excellence, and I often say it's about progress, not perfection, that will kind of get you there. So I don't know what your thoughts are with regards to that in terms of, how kind of the personal and professional are linked for a leader.
To me, they're all the same thing.
Okay.
It's all, there's no difference. There's no difference between the fact that things go wrong in the business world. And I'm not a personal coach. I'm the last person anybody wants to ask advice from a personal coaching perspective. I'm a business coach. So my interest is how to improve I measure it in terms of value of a business. Now, there's two things I can do. I can help to reduce costs, or I can help to increase revenue. Increasing revenue is always the preference, and that's where I sit. Now, the things that typically go wrong generally are people related. Sometimes you may have a bit of software that goes wrong, or you have an engineering problem or something, but typically there's a people element in there, and it's how you go about dealing with it on that level, and how you go about helping the team to overcome the challenge. The best example is in boards. So I do a lot of work with company boards where I'll get approached by a founder or a CEO, and they'll say, Russell, I don't think my board is performing as optimally as it could be. So that could be a scenario. So what I would do is I would ask to sit in as just to sit in and watch a board meeting run. And then at the end of that, I would sit down with the chief exec in confidence and ask him or her, how do you think it went? And then they would give me that feedback, and then we would work through how to optimize the performance of the board. And I suppose I'm quite hard, because to a certain extent, I'm probably assuming there are some wrong people on the board, some people who perhaps need to step down from the board, some new appointments that need to be made. And then we work through that scenario. And they love me in London for doing that, because if you've got to ask people to step down from a board, sometimes that can be a challenging conversation. So having the 6'5" Scots guy to do that works quite well.
Wow. And I guess you've got a lot of experience doing that, have you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And what do you think in terms of obviously being aware of change in the marketplace? I mean, what do you think is the main driver? Everyone talks about AI, for example. Is that really the biggest challenge for leaders right now, and sort of technological advance, or are there other things at work, or is it another millennium bug where there's lots of fear around it, and actually, it's nothing to fear, it's actually to work with?
So there is a great scenario, the millennium bug. So we have a concern that all computer systems are going to crash on a particular date. So for a lot of people, that would have caused great concern. But for a lot of other people, they went, great, this is a fantastic time to offer consultancy or support or advice, and our business can make a lot of money at this point. We've seen it through legislation changes such as GDPR. I don't think any of these are significant single issues. They can be significant. So I've advised two companies in Kiev and in Ukraine recently. They've got a massive problem. It's not AI. It's not finding talent. It's a bloody war going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I think what we need to do is, for each of us, it's to understand what is the change that is affecting us or affecting our business? Not that I'm not a great believer in the general news and everything, and people telling me to worry about this or worry about that. It's like we sit down with the business and we go, what is the challenge we're facing? And most businesses, it's quite similar. It's cash flow. It's, do we have enough money coming into the business to actually allow us to operate the business? Because if you've not solved, if the cash flow is a problem, everything else takes secondary place. I'm not going to worry about AI because I might not have enough money to pay the staff at the end of the month. Yeah. So that becomes the critical one. And the way to address a cash flow issue is not to sell more or save costs. It's to get a good finance director, because the finance director can then tell you what the real reality of your situation is and can suggest what changes you might want to make. So at Scottish Business Network, we have a team of part-time or fractional, if you like, finance directors and CFOs with international experience, and dropping them in for a couple of days a month into a company will help to provide that. And so it's looking at what is important for your company and not the general noise in the marketplace. We've survived. Technology could be a major problem for someone. So, for example, if you are I don't know, what's AI going to be good at? Let's not talk about AI. Let's talk about tools like spell checkers. So when spell checking came out, there was a whole the need to learn how to spell disappeared. So that spelling piece disappeared, but we still went ahead and wrote things. I think AI's got to be viewed as being, this is the technology sector's latest marketing thing. So it was cryptocurrency, it was various different, it was on-site, off-site, da-da-da-da-da-da. What our world is today from a technology perspective is at my desk here, I have unlimited processing power. My processing power is no longer limited to what's on the processor on my computer. Through the web, I've got unlimited processing power and I've got unlimited access to data. And that is exactly the same as my mate at IBM. We've both got the same access to data. They will possibly have more refined data. They've got more clever data analysts. They've got all these things, but we've both got access to this. And what it really is, the question is, what can I do to help my business with this? How can this help me to become more efficient and more effective? There's a great one. There's an AI tool called Happenstance. Comes out of San Francisco, and it's revolutionized the way I use products like LinkedIn or Gmail or something, just as a way of being able to incredibly quickly search all of my contacts across the world to find a particular skill set.
And how do you keep on top of things? What are the trusted sources for you to keep your finger on the pulse in terms of what's going on?
So how is I maintain my curiosity. Good. So I'm incredibly curious all the time to find out, I don't understand that, how does it work? So I am the bizarre person when someone presents me with a new smartphone. I go to the settings area and switch on and off all the settings to see what happens, because I'm curious. What does this new device do? So by being naturally curious, that allows me to search out answers. But I don't want to. I'm not involved in education, so it's not the fact I want to learn a particular subject in depth. I just want to have a particular item to go and become curious about. So you've got me using StreamYard today.
Yeah.
So I'll probably go off and play with StreamYard later on to go, oh, I could be using that for this, or using it for that, or using it for that. So yeah, the curiosity is at the core of it. And it's also, when it comes to change, a big risk to your business is not being curious. Because you might know, if you think about what a business is, it's a big machine with a handle. And what we want is we just want to be turning the handle at the same pace, and that will generate the same amount of money, the same happy customers, the same happy staff. And change affects the turning of that handle. And then it's how we can get the handle turning again, and what changes we need to make to do that. But I would urge people to be curious. And it brings me personal gratification and excitement to be curious, to find out how things work. You know, I've got headphones which clip round about my ear, and they kind of, I'm not very good at the bone vibration or something, and that's what I listen to listen to music now.
Yeah.
And that's because I was running. I did some research about different types of headphones to use, and these ones popped up, and I thought, well, I'll try that. Oh, I do like it. I don't like it, and that. And from a change management or a change perspective, I'm not worried about it getting wrong. So I've got a £50 spend there to get these headphones.
Yeah.
I've allocated that money to do this. If I don't like the headphones, I'm okay. But I've also know I could probably sell the headphones secondhand to reduce that risk. But it's a great thing with technology to be curious, because our technology platforms are typically designed on a trial by error way. So when you're booking your flight on EasyJet, for example, and you go through the interface booking this and booking that, and they're trying to sell you things, it's quite likely you're going to press the wrong button and then have to reverse and do it again. And learning about the fact that that is not a failure, that's the way it's designed. It's designed to confuse you, so you'll buy extra luggage or get insurance or something.
Absolutely.
At least it seems to be from my perspective. But the problem with managing change in that way is we come from an education system which demands us to be right. So let's run that scenario. So when I went to school, the teacher would say, has anyone got a thought about this question? And I would put my hand up and I would give my answer, and I would be wrong. And the teacher would say, Russell, you're wrong. Right? And at that moment, everyone else in my class has the chance to ridicule me, right? So they will ridicule me for being wrong. So the next time the teacher says, anybody got a question, I sit on my hands and I don't ask, and I stop being curious, because I've associated curiosity with, oh, if I get it wrong, I'll get punished. And we've got to be aware of that these things are all roaming in our head. And to be successful in business, you've got to get it wrong an awful lot of times and be able to live with that.
Yeah, it's a couple of things I'll pick up on. I think I sort of heard the phrase, I kind of knew about like pushing doors, and when things don't go well, keep pushing doors. But I saw something recently that says you either win in a situation or you learn. You never lose by trying. And there's obviously the well-versed Edison one about, designing a light bulb, finding 1,000 ways not to do it. And I think that curiosity is obviously key with doing that, because you're all, as long as you keep trying, you keep picking yourself back up, you'll be okay. And it also reminds me of a mantra when I was an account director for an marketing agency called Life down in Birmingham. They had a London office and worked with the likes of Nestle and Molson Coors and some of the big kind of FMCG brands globally. And they had a kind of mantra and a thought around question everything. So whether it was a client brief, whether it was a response, whether it was a presentation, it was always just be curious and be in that mindset to say that there's possibly a better way than maybe my first reaction to this challenge. So that question everything is really important. And I think, as we sort of focus this conversation around leaders and what they do to stay on top of these things, and hence the question about how do you do it, we all have our own different sort of unique ways of doing it. But I suppose the challenge we have is that there is so many different channels of information. Which ones do we trust? Do we is it like an internal kind of monitoring system that kind of says, yes, that's good information, I'll act upon that. We were kind of saying before as well, like getting hit by lots of people saying, oh, we can get you more clients, we can do this. You can get bombarded with stuff, but you have to find the wood from the trees. So which information sources and which things do you hold as true and you follow, and what things do you kind of question? That whole kind of question everything idea.
Trial and error. There's no other way to do it. Someone will say to me, like for at the moment, I've got an opportunity in my diary to pick up an extra advisory role. Right. So I'm available to, or I'm trying to select a company that I think I could work with and make a difference.
Yeah.
And the target is to do that in London. So I could meet someone and they say, hi, Russell, I could help you to win more clients, to find that role that you want. Now, if I've never met that person before, I'm a little bit hesitant. However, if Simon was to come to me and say, hey, Russell, I've been working with this particular organization. They've been really effective at finding me new clients. I really respect them. You should maybe have a chat with them. I would probably take that call. So at the core of this, and I suppose it is about what do we trust? It's about trust, but the trust for me comes from the people. So I've got a friend, and not even someone I know very well, but they contacted me from San Diego and said that they were using an outsourced marketing service. And I get approached by outsourced marketing services all the time. And he said, no, these guys are really good, Russell. And I've been working with them now for a year and a half, and they're absolutely superb. But it's because it was a personal recommendation. And I think that part matters. Of course, I've got a challenge that the tagline for the personal recommendations I get is that if someone's running a business and they're looking for some assistance, perhaps to grow into new markets, they'll say, you could use Russell. He's really good and experienced, but be careful, he'll tell you the truth. Which I quite like that, but I'm not sure if that puts some people off. But I feel in my role as an advisor, my responsibility is to be honest, and sometimes that honesty may disagree with the senior people within the organisation, but truth will out.
I think it's really interesting as I've sort of charted your kind of career since we met, because we met a number of years ago. I'm not exactly sure how it was. I think it might have been an SBN event and my first contact there. And we definitely share this heart and this passion for connecting people. So I've done a lot of that over the last couple of days where, often when I'm speaking to someone, and I'll tend to just do a short 15-minute call with someone that I first met that I think there's maybe just so we can kind of test out the water. I can hear from them, they can hear from me, and then if it's something you want to commit some more time to. But actually, I'm quite often saying to people, tell me what your superpower is. Tell me what it is that you can differentiate or do better than someone else in your field, and that arms me with the ability to put you in contact with someone. And it's amazing, the whole sort of reciprocity. And I know that you're a big ambassador for this in terms of connecting people, but it's amazing how it does somehow come round back to you as well. And there's such joy in connecting people, seeing them work together. So, there was a couple of people I put together about 2 years ago, and they've now launched a kind of an online psychometric, and that might never have happened without my connection. And there was no commercial gain for me whatsoever. But, people have been referred to me, whether it's coaching, consultancy, mentoring, whatever else. So it does come round. So maybe we could kind of explore that whole importance around networking, particularly for senior leaders. And we're on a global stage, right?
So this is kind of where I am now. My area of interest is the role of a connector, because I undervalued my ability as a connector because I felt it wasn't an established role. It wasn't senior enough. It wasn't whatever. But I was with someone today, and they said to me, hey, Russell, it's not a business question, but I'm looking for a finance person with experience in Bulgaria. I just thought I'd mention it, Russell, just because we've got this situation going on.
Interesting brief.
So the chances of me 10 years ago being able to help with that are pretty remote. So I came back to my desk today, and I went on to Happenstance, and it does natural language queries. So I did a whole paragraph about what I was looking for. And it came back with 10 people who I am a first connection with on LinkedIn, who may have the skill set to help. And I've messaged 2 of them. Now, people who are a first connection with me on LinkedIn, I assume are friends. I don't write to someone and go, hello, we're first connections, but we've not met. I just assume if someone's a first connection, they're a friend.
Yeah.
I also assume that if I write to someone, in this case, someone with finance experience in Bulgaria, and I say, I might have a bit of business for you, they're hardly going to respond with, go away, we don't like you, right? You're going to make someone's day if it comes off. So, so I'm fortunate. I've spent 15 years building a global community, right? You know, if you said to me, Russell, do you know anyone in finance in Bulgaria? I'd probably go, I don't think so, but I do. I just didn't know that. So there's the building the community is core. I don't attend networking events.
Okay.
Because I find I maybe attend them whereby I'm speaking at them, but I don't naturally attend, and because I've never really been able to work out how that a bunch of people in a room, because as soon as we as human beings get together in a room, we immediately pair off with the people we know. That's our natural thing.
Sure.
And so that's kind of, it's kind of self-defeating in that way. And we get approaches whereby there are methodologies around that, but that tends to be a natural one. The way that I do this networking thing or community building is I do it round about projects. So I say a project could be an event. So I'm having an event in Manchester next Wednesday, or I'm helping an ambassador there with an event. So I will send a message and an invitation to everyone I know in Manchester over the weekend and say, hi there, going to be in Manchester on Wednesday. Great if you want to come along for a beer, and we'll update you on what's happening in Scotland. So that's me taking action with my community. So I find that's the way that I do it. Like LinkedIn being by far and away the core piece of technology to do that. And like we're doing this chat today because I think I put a post out and you said something as what about a LinkedIn Live, and I went, great, let's try it and see what happens. So it's that kind of thing. So my networking is more about work hard every day to build a community, and then work out how you can help the people in your community. Because if you think about it, right, if I message someone through LinkedIn, 50% of the people don't get the message, and then 25% of the da-da-da-da-da-da. But in the present moment, someone in Sofia may have just got a message from the UK saying, I might have a bit of business for you. Now, I'm not saying that person's the right person to use. All I'm doing is I'm trying to suggest that's someone. I've answered the ask of me was, do I know someone? And I say, yes, here's someone, I know them. You see and have a chat. But imagine if that develops into a bit of business. That's suddenly I've got a very good friend in Sofia who might want to do this again. We'll probably have a call. I'll hear how good he is from my friend to see how he was able to help them. And then we might lead on to doing other things. A great example of that is in outside, not in Tirana, but outside the main city, but in Albania.
Right.
So I helped a young man there who contacted me, and he's now launched the Albanian Business Network, and I'm speaking at their first event in the UK in March.
Brilliant.
You know, and then I've contacted some of the other speakers at the conference, and it's all about that kind of trying to add value to other people and trying to help.
Brilliant. I just want to, just for the benefit of the people with us, feel free to put any points or questions into the comments. Really keen to kind of get your reflections or questions for either myself or Russell. So feel free to do that. And it just kind of occurred to me, a lot of the work that I do, particularly on the kind of one-to-one, moving into kind of portfolio careers or C-suite or that level just below up to it, this word around executive, or sort of phrase around executive presence and gravitas. So you've obviously talked there about not doing networking events, but when you have a one-on-one engagement, obviously you're a very busy guy. I know you travel an awful lot. You're in and out of meetings on trains, planes and automobiles. What's your advice or guidance with regards to having a real influence and impact on that contact? You know, because it could just be a quick phone call. It could be an exchange on LinkedIn. It could be in the room. You know, what are your sort of top tips to make an impact?
Hints and tips to make an impact. So every single call or meeting or interaction I have, I always start not on subject.
Right.
So I remember I did a big thing contacting Scottish people around the world during COVID to help SBN. And we would go on the call. You know how you normally go on a call and you go, hello, my name's Russell. Hello, my name's Simon. What is it you do? What do you do? And I would start every call by going, have you heard about Andy Murray's thigh? Looks like he's injured. And they would go, I know, we're all wondering about this. Suddenly we have engagement, we have passion, we have everything's working. So I tried to do that because it breaks down all the barriers really quickly. And it's the same when you're speaking on the stage. You want to break down these barriers.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to bring the real you out so that people go, that's what it'll be like dealing with this person. They appear natural, relaxed. Gravitas is also about how you handle yourself, how you present yourself. So I did a really interesting one. I did a assignment years ago in Mayfair in the West End, and it was with a private family fund, right? So if you imagine the scenario, we've got this private family fund, and there's a lot of money in that kind of industry, and everyone was stunning, suits that were very, very expensive, right? So at that point, I bought I think it was the last suit I had. I bought it in Marks and Spencer's, right? So there was going to be a gravitas issue here, because when I met the people in that West End location, they were probably going to look down on me because they were going to pass judgment on me because of my age, because of my accent, because of the school I went to, because of what I wore. So I had to think about that. So what I did was I turned up in a tweed jacket and jeans, right? And at that point, they couldn't work it out. So they're going, right, he's got this accent and he's in a tweed jacket and jeans. So either he's really poor or he's really rich, but we can't work out which. So in a way, I managed to position myself not to be a weak position in that. And the third one is when I speak on stage. So gravitas when you speak on stage is very important, because the gravitas allows people to listen to you and to sort of maybe add a little bit extra weight to your words. And what I do there is I use silence. So I will stand up and approach the microphone and go, that's it, I've got the whole room. Because everyone's taken a breath to go, what's going to happen? And I think you use these techniques and you sort of learn them through your life. You've also got your physical characteristics, So I'm taller than average, so that kind of is a focus, and about that kind of helps as well with that gravitas area. I've got, obviously we're in Scotland, so I'm speaking at a Scottish speed at the moment. But when I'm in London, when I speak much slower, and I pronounce my words so that people can understand me. I had a great example of this yesterday in London when I ordered my dinner, and I'd been talking to a Scottish friend, and I was talking at fast Scottish speed, and the waiter brought my dinner plate, and I sat down and I went, could I have some pepper? And he went, excuse me? And I said, pepper. And he went, pen and paper? And I realized that I wasn't putting in enough effort to be understood. No, I could take the arrogant position and say he should understand me, I'm the customer, but that's not going to help. And so I think there's a lot about how you're perceived. And, a Scottish voice are utilizing my accent at particular moments. And, like swearing with a Scottish or an Irish accent is just way more effective. So it's thinking about these things.
Brilliant. So I've got a question from Hugo. Thanks, Hugo. What advice have you when you feel that nobody listens when you are leading a community?
Oh, Hugo, I know Hugo is our ambassador for Scottish Business Network in Mexico. And my advice is always the same, Hugo. It's just to keep talking, because eventually people will listen. You just may have to change the way you communicate the message. So a great example of that is getting someone else to deliver your message who's got more authority in that community.
Fantastic. That's great. So how did you meet Hugo?
Now, this is one of the downsides of being a connector, and the fact that I may not be able to precisely remember where, but I do remember that Hugo did the best Zoom call during Scottish International Week we ever had.
Brilliant.
Because he was cycling while on the Zoom call, which was just superb.
That's great. And naturally, my mind goes to things like emotional intelligence, obviously coined in the 90s by Daniel Goleman, and it seems to be rising up and up the kind of leadership agenda, really, in terms of being obviously good at regulating and managing your emotions and those of other people. And I think that's even more important, do it in a virtual world, you know, when you're doing a lot of meetings online as well. So do you see many differences in terms of how you engage in person versus online?
So no, to me it's all the same.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure I've really fully understood emotional intelligence, but I do understand Burns. And Burns has a great piece about seeing the world as others see us.
Yeah.
And I discovered that for some reason, I'm really interested in trying to imagine what it must be like for the other person. So Simon's here. This is his LinkedIn Live, and I'm his guest. So I would imagine that Simon wants this to go very well. He wants me to give good answers that maybe we can record, and he wants me not to in any way disturb the flow of the session, right? So I'm imagining Simon wants that. So I'm very careful in the way that I interact, because I want Simon's LinkedIn Live to be a success. So to me, it's not emotional intelligence. It's trying to think about what I can do to help the other person. And I wrote a piece on LinkedIn today about focus. And focus plays a key part there. In every conversation, our job is to ensure the other person would say that we made them the most important person in the room. That's really important. No, we leaned in, we listened, we're curious, we tried to understand. That focus is so important. And the second part is the follow-up. So, for example, if at that meeting I was at this afternoon where someone said, do you know a finance person in Bulgaria? I followed up, and I will drop a note back to them to say, not sure if I can help, but I found someone and I've reached out. That kind of, I suppose it's caring more than anything else. And it's called professionalism. And I know it's this emotional intelligence is a phrase that's commonly used. But what I would like to think is people don't think Russell's good at emotional intelligence. They think Russell's good at being Russell, you know, and honestly being the person I am. And I think that shines through as well, particularly when you do public speaking. So when I do public speaking, I don't get nervous because I'm just being me. I'm not having to remember words. I very infrequently use something like PowerPoint. I just prepare, and then deliver. And I deliver in a narrative style. And it's a great way to give speeches because we're used to telling stories. And also it's great for the audience because we're all used to listening to stories. And the other thing is that stories are easy to repeat.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying there with specifically about being yourself, because EQ can be chucked around. And actually, when someone says, well, what's coaching all about? And actually, I think coaching is all about self-awareness. So whether you're doing psychometrics or different tests to see where you are around, it's all about honing in on, I call it I talk to clients about superpowers. What is it that you can do that no one else can? And everyone's unique in terms of their experience, knowledge, and expertise that they've been through. So it's really trying to understand, I think, what the gift is. And obviously you found it in being a connector and being on stage and an influencer and all the rest of it. And I found I've always had the sort of knack of being able to find common ground with anyone that I speak to, whether that is a junior executive all the way up to C-suite, CEO, board members, and the ability to build trust very, very quickly, because clients are time poor often. They want to get to the nub of it. They've got decisions to make and all the rest of it. They haven't got time to do that. And I think that whole thing around whatever you score on psychometrics or what people say, it's about focusing on what you can do really well and not worrying too much about the things you can't, because there's other people you can build community with or be, in a project team or whatever else. And actually, it's harnessing the best strengths from each of the people that are in that community or team. Does that resonate at all?
I think so. I choose the role of connector, but that's not my purpose. No, I've got a very, very clear purpose in my life, and I live that. And my purpose is to help others. Now, I've managed to find a way to turn that into a highly successful career. So I am here to try to help you by perhaps saying something that will help your audience. That's what I'm here for. That's my purpose. Someone asked for help, and I said I can do that. I can only really do the helping thing within the business community, because that's where my skill set lies and my experience lies. But having that clear, being absolutely clear about your purpose, or some people call it like your North Star. I know intuitively what to do in situations because that's my purpose. And when we look at businesses, I think a lot of people have forgotten what the purpose of a business is. So the purpose of a business is to help your customers find value in what you do. The purpose of a business is to help your customers find value in what you do. It's not about enriching your shareholders or making a lot of money. It's about that particular thing. That's what we're there for. And if you run a business whereby you spend all your time trying to find out if you're successful at helping your customers find value in you, you will be monumentally successful. Monumentally.
And we're kind of got about 10 minutes left. I think we're probably at the point in the conversation that we could kind of tie things up. I'm not seeing more questions coming through. Obviously, if there is any questions, we can always cover that offline. But a question I always like to say with a client at the end of a session is, given our conversation, is there anything else you'd like to think, feel, or say, Russell, as a kind of final kind of note and summary of the time that we spent discussing this today and managing change?
So if I think about the fact I'm here to help Simon, I would probably suggest to you that you want to do this regularly, because you're a very competent host and you're also very good with the technology. You've got a remarkably relaxed style, which fits very well into this. I think that I love doing these because they force me to be reflective.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about this subject of change and how we navigate change, I think what we've got to realize is that there was a great expression when I was a child about, always wanting to see behind the net curtains. So I don't quite know why, but when I was a child, people had, rather than Venetian blinds, they had, I don't know what you would call it, not quite curtains, but they had a material that what we would call netting on the windows.
Yeah, the netting. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, right?
Yeah.
So what we assume as people is everyone else is in control. Everyone else is being successful, particularly the people that we describe as our competition, right? So we take the position that everyone else is doing brilliantly well and we're playing catch up. There's something about our psyche that does this. Whereas when you see behind the net curtains and you actually see how other people are getting on, we're all in the same boat. We've all got problems, we've all got challenges, we've all got things we're trying to overcome. We're all simply just trying to make it through this life. And I find that the biggest risk in all of this is ego. So what I have an ego I have to fight all the time. And the way I choose to do that is by living my purpose. Because if I'm helping someone else, I'm not existing in my head. So understanding that component of yourselves is incredibly important because it answers everything else. And if I look at my career, speaking here to a business coach, looking at my career, my ego said, climb the ladder, climb the ladder, climb that ladder, right? So I got to the top of the ladder. And at the top of the ladder, you get called director, managing director, chief executive officer, right? These are this is the executive life, right? You got to the top. I made it. I made the money. I had the big boardroom. I had everything. It was horrible. I absolutely hated it, right? But I'd made it to the top. So I didn't know what to do then. So I had to go off and go through a lot of soul searching to work out what I really wanted to do. So the only way to find out what I really wanted to do was to kind of start again. And I did that with fear and trepidation, but I did it and I created a new life for myself. And then my curiosity has taken me on a path where I'm continually reinventing myself as I try to find out how can I become better at my purpose of helping other people. And a great example of that was last year when I published a book about the ask.
I was going to ask about that as a great.
But the reason we did the book wasn't to satisfy my ego about becoming a best-selling author or something, because I've definitely not done that. But it was because I told people that if they had an ask, they had something they wanted help with, just ask me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people found that difficult. They found it difficult to actually enunciate and construct what the ask was in a way that I could help. So we wrote the book, and then people have gone, right, I get it. I've got to simplify the thing I'm asking you, Russell. And I said, yes, you have, because I'm not as clever as you are in your particular area or domain of specialization. So you have to ask me a question as though I'm a 12-year-old. That way I'll understand what you mean, and then I can help you. So we wrote the ask, not to satisfy my ego, but to help me become better at helping others. And I think that's a great example of it.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's a great book. So how can people get hold of that, Russell?
There's a website called theask.scot.
And they can go there and you can get it as a digital download. Is that right?
Yep. There's even an audio book coming out.
Superb. Superb. Well, thank you so much, Russell, for giving up your time and your wisdom and knowledge. Hopefully, there are some things in there that have really helped people that are watching this either live or on replay. And I value our relationship greatly. Looking forward to continuing to collaborate and help and do all those things that we enjoy doing. So yeah, thanks everyone for kind of tuning in and listening. No big sales pitch from me. If you want to get in touch with either Russell or myself, obviously it's easy to find us on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a quick 15-minute, half-an-hour conversation if you find that you want to explore some of the themes that we've discussed or otherwise. But no, again, thank you, Russell, and enjoy the rest of the night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.